How's it going, guys? Alex here, welcome back to another Dokkan Battle video, and today we are going to be going over the worst unit of each type. When I was making my decision as to which unit is the worst for each type, there were multiple units, so they will be in this video, just so that I can explain why I chose a certain unit over another. So, if we get started with the STR type, these are the three units that I believe are the worst for this type. Gohan has a very small chance to stun with super attack. His passive is essentially useless as it only activates when you're fighting 3 or more enemies, and even when it does, it only gives him free ki. And his best key link is probably the Saiyan lineage. But if we now move on to Bardock, his best straight is his passive skill. He gives a 15% attack boost to all types, however he does have a restriction on his passive, which is one of the factors that brings this card down. And not to mention, he also doesn't have very common key links, which unfortunately drag him down even more, but keep in mind that because of how old this card is, links such as Prepared for Battle weren't very common, and the same definitely applies to Gohan. Now Great Saiyaman 2 or Videl is somewhat similar to Bardock. Her passive skill does give an attack boost to all allies, but instead of a 15% attack boost, she gives a 1000 attack boost, which obviously isn't as big of a boost as Bardock's. She also doesn't have the best key links. Her best one is probably Battle Diva, but she does have a quality like the other two. She can greatly lower defense, and she also has the Blazing Battle link, which makes her very useful for the Broly event, even though she does lack top tier links. But in the end, I do believe that the Gohan is the worst of the three. Videl is consistently good against the Broly event, and she also has an unconditional passive skill. She doesn't have the greatest links, but she is somewhat better than the others. And the same goes for Bardock. Despite him having a restriction on his passive, with the way that the current meta is, it's a lot easier to maintain this. Gohan does have the Saiyan lineage, which is probably the most common link amongst the three, but due to his low chance of stunning, and a passive skill that will most likely never go off, he is, in my opinion, the worst of the three. So, if we now move on to the agility types, we have Chaozu, the Agility Super Saiyan Goku Rebirth, and Golden Frieza. So even though he got a rebirth, this Goku is still easily one of the worst cards in the game. His passive skill only gives him 7 ki, but this also has a restriction, but when you do get below it, you're basically guaranteed a super attack. But due to his low chance of stunning, purposely trying to get below this restriction is somewhat pointless because of his low chance of stunning. He does have Golden Warrior and Shattering the Limit, which are fairly common key links, but his main strengths are stunning and disabling Broly's Rampage. So now the problem with the Agility Golden Frieza is that his only key link is Revival, which isn't very common at all. His main strength is his passive skill. It allows him to reduce enemy defense by 50%, however, even though it may sound great, this passive is only really useful against Broly, and to add to that, it's based on a chance. The chances of getting his passive skill off are definitely very high, but because there are so many better options in super rares and SSRs, it pretty much makes his only trait useless. Now Chaozu suffers the same problem as the others as he does not have any top tier key links. He does have Golden Z Fighters, which is great if you're going to run a Z Fighter team, but with the way that things are currently, you are most likely not going to be running a team like this, which brings me to his best trait, which is Stunning. He has a 15% chance to stun for 2 turns with a super attack, whereas with his passive skill he has a 25% chance to stun for 1 turn, which honestly isn't too bad, but it's not great by any means. But the main problem is when he isn't stunning, he isn't providing anything else, which is one of the factors that lets this card down. But in the end, I do believe that Golden Frieza is the worst of the three. He doesn't provide much key support with his links, and his passive is only somewhat useful for one event. But if we now move on to the tech types, we have the World Tournament Super Saiyan Goku, Tech Roshi, and Tech GT Trunks. Before I get into it, keep in mind that these units are very outdated. That's why the majority of them are missing top tier links, but in the future they can definitely improve, and this has been shown many times with the Xeno Trunks and Majube Rebirths. Now the problem with the Tech World Tournament Goku is obviously the lack of links. His main one is Golden Warrior, which, as I said before, for other units is fairly common, but it really doesn't provide too much key support. But like the STR Bardock, his strength is in his passive skill. Like Bardock, he has a 50% restriction. He does give a 15% attack boost to all allies, but the main problem with having a tech type unit that does this is that it's not as easy to maintain on tech as it is on STR, and it also doesn't help that there are better support units for tech. But if Bandai ever decides to give World Tournament units a rebirth, he could potentially be a decent replacement for Vegito. But now if we move on to the Tech Master Roshi, his only key links are the World Tournament Champion and Supreme Warrior, which as you can probably tell aren't very common at all. His passive also isn't that great as well. He gets a 1800 attack boost at the start of the turn, and unfortunately that is the only thing that he can do. But apart from the small attack boost that he gets, this is all he can do unfortunately. But as I said previously for the World Tournament Goku, if they ever decide to give World Tournament rewards or mission rewards a rebirth, he can be somewhat decent. Now Trunks is decent key support for the World Tournament, mainly on Global. He doesn't have the worst key links, he does have GT, which is becoming fairly more common, but you're definitely going to see this link more on a Mono STR team. And the other problem that arises for this Trunks is that there already is a Tech Super Saiyan 2 Goku that does the exact same thing, but the advantage that the Goku has over this Trunks is that he gets 3 key instead of 2, and he also has much better links. But in the end, the Tech Master Roshi is the worst of the 3. He doesn't even have one single common key link, and his passive also isn't that great. But if we now move on to the int types, we have Final Form Cooler, Great Ape Nappa, and Grand Supreme Kai. Now Final Form Cooler has a similar passive skill to Roshi. He gives himself a 1500 attack and defense boost. His strongest key link is Strongest Clan in Space, but one of his redeeming qualities is that he has the Big Bad Bosses link. It doesn't provide any key, but it does provide an attack and defensive boost, which can increase his attack and defense by a fair amount, but overall he isn't that great. But if we now move on to Great Ape Nappa, the good thing about this Nappa is that his super attack is farmable. His only key link is Transform, which is obviously a Great Ape link, which means that unless you are running a Great Ape team, he is never going to get any key. He only has a super rare chance to transform, which means that it's a lot rarer for him to transform. He does give a decent attack and defensive boost to int types. Now that part of his passive isn't actually too bad. If another unit had his passive skill and the shocking speed link, it would definitely be usable on a Mono int team, but due to the rest of Nappa's card, it's not likely that you're going to sacrifice a spot for him. But if we now move on to the Grand Supreme Kai, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first unit that we've looked at that has no key link. Like many of the other units, his strength is in his passive. He recovers 2000 HP per int orb collected. Now the main problem with this is orb placement. There may be situations where you can only get 1 orb, there may be situations where you can get 5 orbs, but ultimately you are going to be giving those orbs to Buhan. He recovers a lot more, and he doesn't even need int type orbs, and the fact that he doesn't have any key links just makes this card even worse. But 1 or 2 changes to this card can definitely make a big difference. But if we now move on to the final type, which is physical, we have the physical Super Saiyan Vegeta, and we have Hachiyak. Super Saiyan Vegeta has been declared the worst card in the game by many people, but I honestly disagree to a degree. If we were talking about the worst summonable SSR, I would probably agree, but if we get straight into it, Vegeta's main key link is definitely Golden Warrior. As I said before, it's definitely very common, especially on a monophysical team. He also does have the Vegeta family, but this obviously isn't as common. And I'd also like to mention that his super attack is somewhat easy to raise. You have the super rare Tech Super Saiyan Vegeta, which can be used to raise his super attack, and you can also farm Super Saiyan Vegeta from the Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta event. But his strength does lie in his passive skill. He reduces the attacked enemy's attack by 25%, which isn't bad, but it's not great at the moment. If it activated as the turn started, it would be much better, which is why I believe that this Vegeta ever got a rebirth, he would be a good unit on a monophysical team. All they would have to do is give him the Prepared for Battle link, increase his passive slightly, and make sure that his passive is active at all times. But if we now move on to Hachiyak, he also has a farmable super attack. His only key link is Hatred of Saiyans, which as you can imagine isn't very common at all. He does however have the Big Bad Bosses link, which does give him a decent attack and defensive boost, but his passive recovers 40% HP if he delivers the final blow. Now this can be useful for the World Tournament, but in my opinion, outside of that, he really doesn't serve any other purpose. Villain teams are already ridiculously powerful. They have healers, they have debuffers, which is why in the end I do believe that Hachiyak is the worst out of the two. Vegeta's damage reduction does have value, and it has a lot of potential in the future, and this is why I do believe that Hachiyak is the worst physical unit. But that is it guys, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you don't agree with what I said for one of the types, let me know in the comment section down below, and if you do feel like I haven't included a unit that is worse than others, do let me know. Also, I don't mention this a lot, but if you aren't following my Twitter, please go ahead and do so. I can communicate a lot more with you guys over there, so don't forget to look in the description for that. But as always, if you are new, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.